When you hear the word creatine, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably bodybuilders, muscle growth, maybe the gym. But what if I told you that one of the most exciting news stories about creatine has nothing to do with brawn and everything to do with the brain?
Yeah, you heard that right. We're seriously asking the question, could this super common athletic supplement actually be a tool for sharpening our minds, for improving cognitive function, and maybe, just maybe, for helping us tackle some of the brain's biggest challenges? Okay, let's break this down. For decades, creatine's story has been all about muscle power, right? It was about physical performance, helping athletes get that explosive energy. But the science is turning a pretty dramatic corner here. The whole conversation is shifting from muscles to memory, from physical performance to cognitive function. And the audience for this is getting way bigger than just athletes. We're talking about older adults and, well, pretty much everyone.
So how in the world does it work? Well, the easiest way to think about creatine is like a tiny, super efficient battery recharger for your cells. See, your cells run on this energy molecule called ATP. When you use energy, you use up ATP. Creatine's job is to swoop in and rapidly recharge it. And guess what organ is one of the biggest energy hogs in your entire body? Yep, your brain. That's exactly why scientists are getting so excited.
So let's get into the evidence. What does the big picture research, I'm talking major scientific reviews, actually say about all this?
To really get a solid answer, scientists look at things called meta-analyses. It's where they pool together the results from a bunch of different studies to see what the overall trend is. And a huge one from 2024 did just that. They took a deep dive into 16 different high-quality trials.
And the results? They were pretty fascinating. Across all these different studies, taking creatine was linked to a real significant boost in memory. People were processing information faster, and they needed less time to complete tasks that required focus. The researchers actually rated the evidence for memory benefits as having moderate certainty, which, in the world of science, is a pretty strong signal that something real is going on here.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Another big review found something even more specific. When they crunched all the numbers, they saw that this memory-boosting effect from creatine was strongest in older adults, specifically people between the ages of 66 and 76. And that one finding cracks open the door to a huge new question.
And that brings us right to the doorstep of a new frontier, Alzheimer's disease. Think about it. If creatine helps with memory in older adults, could that same energy-boosting power be helpful in a disease where we know the brain's energy system is struggling?
But here was the problem. For the longest time, even with promising signs in animal studies, this quote really says it all. It points out that CRM, which is just creatine monohydrate, had never been tested in humans with AD or Alzheimer's disease. It was a total black box.
But that all changed with something called the CABA trial. This was a massive step. It was the first time ever that researchers conducted a human study to see what happens when you give creatine to patients who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So, let's dig into how this landmark trial actually worked. The researchers basically had 3 critical questions they needed to answer one by one.
First things first, and this is maybe the most practical question of all, is this even doable? Could patients with Alzheimer's, who often have really complex daily routines, realistically stick to taking a high-dose supplement every single day for 8 weeks? Because if they can't, then none of the other science matters.
And the answer was a huge yes. They had a 95% compliance rate. 19 out of the 20 people in the study completed the whole thing. It was well tolerated, no major issues, so checkmark number 1, it's absolutely feasible.
Okay, on to question 2, the biological one. Just because you swallow a pill doesn't mean it's doing its job where it counts. So did the creatine actually get past the blood-brain barrier and, raise the levels inside the brain itself?
And again, a clear yes. Using advanced brain imaging, they saw an average increase of 11% in brain creatine levels. This was the proof they needed. It showed the supplement was having a direct biological effect right where they wanted it to.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question, right? The one we've all been waiting for. Did this boost in brain energy actually translate into any cognitive benefits for the patients?
And this is where it gets incredibly promising. They saw improvements in several key areas. Patients performed better on memory tests, they got better scores on language recognition tests, and they saw a positive trend in attention. These aren't just random blips, these are signals of improvement across different, important brain functions.
So let's step back and put all these pieces together. What's the bottom line?
What should we take away from all this pioneering work?
Honestly, the researchers summed it up best themselves. This quote just hammers home how important this study is. The SABA trial is a true first, the very first piece of human evidence that creatine could be a potential therapy for Alzheimer's.
So the key takeaways are pretty clear. 1. It's possible. Giving high doses of creatine to people with Alzheimer's is safe and totally feasible. 2. It's promising. The data shows it gets into the brain and seems to be linked with cognitive improvements. But, and this is super important to remember, it's still preliminary. This was a small pilot study. It didn't have a placebo group, so it's not the final word. What it does, though, is build an incredibly strong case for what needs to happen next, bigger, longer-term trials to really confirm these effects.
Which leaves us with this incredibly powerful and hopeful question. For so long, Alzheimer's research has been focused on things like plaques and tangles, but this study points to a totally different, maybe complementary idea. Could something as fundamental as boosting the brain's own energy supply be a key to fighting back against this devastating disease? We don't know yet, but for the first time we have a real reason to find out.